He fought back, step by step, swing by swing, bullet by bullet. He ducked under claws, spun away from teeth, kicked away beasts that got too close. Sweat burned his eyes, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Not while Lyra was behind him, trusting him to be the wall between her and death. Another hound slammed into him, knocking him to the ground. Pain exploded in his ribs, but he rolled, got to his feet, and kicked the creature into the wall. He caught his breath for a moment, scanning. Only 14 left. He had taken 6. 14 more to go. Lyra's hand reached out from behind the console, brushing his sleeve. "Ethan, I'm scared." He swallowed hard. "I know," he said. "I'm scared too. But I won't let them take you. Not today. Not ever." The creatures seemed to understand, if only in instinct. They moved faster now, working together, circling him from all angles. Their growls were deep and echoing, filling the room with menace. But Ethan's mind was clear. Every human instinct he had honed through life screamed at him to survive. Every emotional memory screamed at him to protect the girl. A hound lunged from the left. He jabbed his knife, twisting, hearing it squeal in pain. Another jumped from the right. He shot, then slashed, then kicked, moving like a machine. But fueled by desperation and heart, his armor cracked more with each hit. Blood ran down his side, sticky and warm. His muscles burned, and every movement required all of his strength. But still he fought. Every step he stayed standing was another step toward keeping her alive. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, the pack began to thin. One by one, hounds fell, driven back by Ethan's relentless defense. He didn't celebrate. He couldn't. He was exhausted, bleeding, bruised, barely standing, but he was alive. And so was Lyra. She crawled toward him, trembling but smiling weakly. You did it," she whispered. Ethan knelt, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "We did it," he said, voice hoarse, every word a struggle. "You made it." Behind them, shadows still moved, but for the first time in what felt like forever, Ethan allowed himself a small breath. The monsters were down. The girl was safe, and for a moment he felt a strange warmth something humans carried in their hearts. Something that no monster, no war, no fear could ever take away. The will to protect. Even when the odds were impossible. He stood, looking down at the pack of fallen hounds. Then at the girl who had trusted him with her life. He knew this night would change him forever. The memory of her silver eyes, filled with fear and hope, would haunt him, and it would remind him that humans, even one human, could stand against the darkness. No matter how impossible the fight, the last Vrax hound fell with a wet, final thud. Ethan's chest heaved, every breath sharp and shallow. Around him, the dome was a battlefield. Claw marks streaked the walls, metal bent and twisted, and pools of dark, sticky blood reflected the flickering lights. The room was quiet now, but it was a silence that pressed down on him, heavy and suffocating. He knelt, gripping his rifle tightly, and felt the pain in his side fully for the first time. A burning ache ran through his ribs, and his suit was torn in several places, leaking coolant and blood. His hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from exhaustion and the adrenaline finally leaving his body. Every muscle screamed, but he didn't care. He had survived. Lyra had survived. That was enough. The girl crawled out from behind the console, still trembling. Her silver eyes were wide, glimmering with tears and wonder. You're hurt," she whispered, reaching a hand toward him. Ethan forced a smile, weak but real. "A little," he said, his voice hoarse. "I'm fine. We're fine." She hesitated, looking at him with a mixture of fear and admiration. Then she took his hand, her small fingers gripping his sleeve tightly. He felt a pang in his chest. In this moment, all the pain and struggle seemed to crystallize into one thing: the raw, unbreakable bond between them. A human and a child from two worlds, connected by survival. A sudden sound snapped Ethan's attention. Emergency lights flared across the dome, harsh and sudden. From the shadowed corridors, figures appeared, Dalian soldiers, rifles raised, scanning. Their movements were precise, efficient, but when their eyes fell on the scene, they froze. They saw the bodies first, the 20 Vrax hounds strewn across the floor. Then they saw Ethan, standing amidst the carnage, battered but alive. And finally, they saw the girl, trembling yet unharmed, standing in the middle of the room with trust shining from her eyes. One of the soldiers whispered, almost to himself, "By the stars." Ethan dropped his rifle, letting it clatter to the floor. He couldn't look away from Lyra. The soldiers approached cautiously, and he could see awe and disbelief in their faces. They had expected carnage. They had expected only death. But what they saw was something else. A human who had stood alone, against 20 monsters and lived. Lyra stepped closer to him, still clutching his arm. "Ethan, thank you," she said softly. Her voice shook, but it carried the weight of someone who had been given a second chance at life. Ethan shook his head, trying to smile through the exhaustion and pain. "No," he whispered, voice barely audible. "I just didn't want you to die." The soldiers lowered their weapons, still in stunned silence. One of them knelt beside Ethan, checking his suit and scanning his injuries. Ethan let them work, feeling drained, broken, but strangely alive. For the first time in months, maybe years, he allowed himself to feel something like relief. But the relief was brief. He looked around at the dome, at the bodies, at the shattered walls. He thought about the children he had failed in the war, the lives he hadn't been able to save. And he felt a pang of sorrow that, mixed with pride. He had survived, yes, but at what cost? Every scar, every ache, every drop of blood was a reminder that survival was never easy. He glanced at Lyra, who was finally standing upright, her small frame still trembling. Her silver eyes met his, and for a moment, the chaos of the dome faded. There was only her and him, human and child. Alive against impossible odds. Ethan took a deep breath and straightened, feeling the weight of every wound, every fear, every heartbeat that had brought him here. He had faced death, stared into the darkness, and come out still standing. And though he didn't know what the future held, one thing was clear: he would not leave her side. Not now, not ever. The dome was silent. The monsters were gone. But in that silence, Ethan could hear something else, the soft, fragile hope of a life saved, of a trust earned, and of a bond that would not break, no matter how dark the universe grew. The corridor outside the dome echoed with hurried footsteps. Ethan had just helped Lyra to her feet when a figure appeared in the doorway. At first, he thought it was another soldier. Then he saw her skin a soft shade of violet, her eyes wide and filled with fear, yet glimmering with hope. Lyra's mother, the alien woman, froze for a moment, staring at the scene before her. 20 monstrous Vrax hounds lay scattered across the floor, broken and lifeless. In the center, a single human, bloodied, battered, but standing tall had protected her child. Her mouth opened, but no words came. Her small arms trembled, and then she fell to her knees. Lyra ran forward and wrapped her arms around her mother. "Mother," she cried, voice full of relief and fear. The woman clutched her daughter tightly, sobbing, shaking from the sheer intensity of the moment. Tears streamed down her face, leaving trails through the dust and blood that covered them. Ethan watched from a few steps away, exhausted and bleeding, trying to stay upright. His body ached in every place he had been hit, but he barely noticed. His attention was on the reunion, the sight of a mother holding her child again, finally safe. Then the woman's gaze lifted, and her eyes fell on Ethan. He was barely recognizable, covered in blood, scratches across his armor and skin. Her chest heaved. She fell forward again, pressing her forehead to the floor in a gesture of gratitude and reverence. You saved my child," she cried, voice breaking, trembling with emotion. "You faced them, all of them." For her, Ethan's stomach tightened. He had fought countless battles, seen death and destruction, but nothing had hit him like this. Her cry wasn't just gratitude, it was raw, unfiltered emotion. It shattered him in a way that bullets, claws, or pain never could. It cut straight to the core of who he was. He wanted to speak, to say something, but the words caught in his throat. All he could do was look down at Lyra, safe and alive, and back at the mother who was sobbing on the ground. The enormity of what he had done, of what he had survived, pressed down on him with weight he hadn't expected. Lyra pulled at his hand, her small fingers warm against his bloodied suit. "Ethan," she whispered, "you saved me. You saved me. Ethan struggled to breathe. His voice shook. I couldn't let them take you. I couldn't." The mother looked up at him through tears. She reached out a trembling hand and touched his cheek, gently, as if afraid he might disappear. "You risked everything. You could have died," she said, voice cracking, "and yet, here you are, for her, for my child." Ethan blinked, trying to absorb the words. Every fight, every wound, every strike he had taken, every second of terror, all led to this moment. And yet, he realized this wasn't victory in the usual sense. This was something far heavier, far more real. He had saved a life, yes, but he had also carried the hope of a mother, the trust of a child, and the weight of human courage into a place where nothing else lived. The mining moon K-47 floated alone at the edge of human-controlled space. It was a dead place, covered in grey dust and broken metal. Long ago, it had been full of lights, voices, and machines digging deep into the moon's skin. Now it was silent. Too silent human, Ethan Cross stepped carefully through the ruins. His boots crunched softly on the dust. His helmet light cut a thin white line through the darkness. Every breath inside his suit sounded loud in his own ears. He did not like places like this. Empty places always remembered things people tried to forget. Ethan was not a soldier anymore. At least, that was what he told himself. He had left the military 2 years ago, after the border war ended. Too many screams. Too many bodies. Too many orders that made no sense. He had sworn he would never fight again, but here he was, holding a rifle, answering a distress call no one else wanted. The call had been weak and broken. Just noise at first, then a single word repeated again and again. Help. 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 Most pilots ignored it. K-47 was marked as a quarantine moon. Something had gone wrong in the old research domes. Creatures had escaped. No one survived long there. No one except maybe the one sending the signal. Ethan paused and checked. His wrist scanner. The screen flickered. Life sign detected. Age, juvenile, species. Nan-human. Status. Alive. Ethan's throat went dry. A kid. He whispered. He looked up at the broken dome in the distance. Its outer walls were cracked open like a wound that never healed. Warning lights blinked red, slow and tired, as if even the machines wanted to give up. That dome was deep inside the red zone. Everyone knew what lived there now. The Vrax hounds, fast, strong, hunted in packs. They learned from every kill. Last reports said there were at least 20 of them inside that dome. Ethan stood still for a long moment. He could turn back. He could say the signal was too weak. He could say it was already too late. No one would check. No one would blame him. He had survived enough wars to know when odds meant death. His finger tightened on the rifle. Then he remembered something he had tried to forget. A small hand, reaching out from rubble during the war. A voice calling for a mother that would never answer, and him, walking away because he had been ordered to. Ethan closed his eyes. Not again, he said quietly. He took one step forward, then another. The closer he got, the colder the air felt. Scratches covered the metal walls. Deep claw marks. Fresh. His scanner beeped. Again. The life sign was still moving, still alive. Ethan reached the entrance of the dome. The door was half torn off, bent outward as if something very strong had forced its way inside. A low growl echoed from somewhere. Deep within, Ethan raised his rifle and activated the safety light. His heart pounded hard against his chest. "Okay," he muttered. "Easy now." He stepped inside. The dome was dark, filled with broken equipment and hanging wires. The smell hit him immediately: blood, rust, and something sharp and animal. His light moved slowly across the room. Then he saw her. She was hiding under a fallen console, small and shaking. Her skin was pale blue, marked with dust and dried blood. Her eyes were large and silver, glowing faintly in the dark. She looked at him. She didn't scream. She just stared, like she couldn't believe he was real. Ethan slowly lowered his rifle and knelt. "It's okay," he said softly. "I won't hurt you." Her lips trembled. "Are you real?" she asked in broken galactic common. Ethan felt his chest tighten. "Yeah," he answered. "I'm real." Before she could say anything else, his scanner screamed. Warning, multiple hostiles detected. Distance. Closing fast. Red dots filled his visor. 20. Of them, the girl grabbed his arm with shaking fingers. "They're coming," she whispered. Ethan stood up and stepped in front of her. He raised his rifle and faced the darkness. "Then they'll have to go through me." First, Ethan's visor flickered as he scanned the room. Shadows shifted in the corners like liquid, curling toward the girl. She pressed herself against the cold metal floor, tiny hands clutching his leg. Her silver eyes shone with fear, but also with something else: a spark, fragile but alive. "I'm Lyra," she whispered. Her voice was small, trembling. "I can't find my mother." Ethan knelt slowly, careful not to scare her. His heart twisted. He had seen children like her before, lost in wars, left to fend for themselves in places too dangerous for any life. "I'm Ethan," he said softly. "I'll help you. I promise." Her small hand reached out, brushing the sleeve of his suit. She looked up at him, trust shimmering in her gaze. It was the kind of trust that made the world heavier on his shoulders. Because now it was not only his life at stake, it was hers. He checked his scanner again. The red dots multiplied, moving closer. He felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. 20 Vrax hounds. Fast, smart, merciless. Most humans wouldn't survive a single one of them. But he had no choice. He couldn't leave her here. Not again. Ethan gently pulled Lyra to her feet. She was light, almost fragile in his arms, but she clung to him as if her life depended on it. And maybe it did. "Stay close," he whispered. "Whatever comes, don't let go of me." The shadows moved faster now. Soft growls echoed through the dome. The sound of claws scraping metal made Ethan's skin crawl. He knew these creatures didn't just attack, they learned, adapted. One wrong move, and they would rip him apart in seconds. He edged toward the central corridor of the dome, rifle raised. Every step was careful, deliberate, silent as he could make it. Lyra's small fingers tightened around his arm, and he could feel her trembling. Her fear was raw and real, and it made his chest ache. He wanted to shield her, to take all the danger himself. Suddenly, a low hiss echoed from the shadows. One of the Vrax hounds leaped out from the darkness, moving faster than Ethan's eyes could track. Its teeth glinted under his helmet light, sharp and wet. He fired. The shot rang out, loud and hollow in the empty dome. The creature yelped and fell, but Ethan barely had time to breathe before the others appeared. Coming at him from all directions, he shoved Lyra behind a broken console. "Stay down," he shouted. Her silver eyes widened, fear and confusion mixing in her gaze. She obeyed, pressing herself low, trembling. Ethan's heart pounded as he faced the pack. 20 of them, muscles rippling, teeth bared, eyes glinting red in the darkness. The first creature lunged at him, and he dove to the side, firing rapidly. He could hear it hit the floor, but before he could recover, another was on him, claws slashing. His armor rang with the impact, and pain shot through his shoulder. He gritted his teeth and pushed it back, slamming the creature into the wall. Lyra's small voice called out, "Ethan, be careful." He felt a surge of anger, fear, and protectiveness all at once. This little girl, lost and alone, trusted him, and he would not fail her. Not this time. Another hound leaped from the shadows. Ethan spun, knife ready, slicing through the air. The creature screeched and fell. Blood and saliva splattered across the floor, mixing with dust. He didn't flinch. His mind narrowed to one simple truth: protect the girl. Keep her alive. Everything else didn't matter. The pack circled, growling and snarling. Their claws scraped metal. Their teeth clicked. But Ethan stood firm, breathing hard, eyes scanning for every movement. He could feel Lyra trembling behind him, small and fragile, yet holding on to hope. Almost there, he whispered to himself. Just a little further. And in that moment, Ethan realized something. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting for hope, for life, for a child who had nowhere else to turn. And he knew, deep down, that humans, no matter how small or fragile, could do the impossible when someone else depended on them. The first hound lunged again, and Ethan met it head-on, heart pounding, determination burning brighter than fear. He would not let them take her. Not now. Not ever. The Vrak's hounds circled closer, their red eyes glinting in the dim light. Ethan's heart pounded like a drum in his chest. 20 of them. 20 monsters faster, stronger, and hungrier than anything he had ever faced. And in front of him, crouched behind a broken console, was Lyra Small, trembling. Trusting him with everything she had, he tightened his grip on the rifle, breathing steady but fast. Each movement mattered. One slip, and the hounds would tear him apart in seconds. Ethan remembered every lesson from his years in the military. Ever panic, always move, always fight smarter. But this wasn't a war anymore. This was survival. And worse, it wasn't just his life, it was hers. The first hound leaped. Its claws scraped the metal floor, sparks flying as they hit his armor. Ethan fired twice. The beast yelped and fell, but another was already lunging at him from the side. He twisted, using the momentum to shove it into a pile of debris. Metal bent, claws scratched his suit, and a hot sting of pain ran through his arm. He ignored it. He could worry about blood later. Right now, he had to fight. Lyra watched with wide, terrified eyes. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please, don't die." He glanced back at her and forced a small, tight smile. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, though he knew he was lying. Every shot, every swing, every dive chipped away at him. His armor was cracked, his rifle overheating. The suit's HUD was blinking red. He was bleeding. He was tired. He was human. And humans were fragile. But he had to keep moving. Another hound jumped from above, claws outstretched. Ethan rolled to the side and grabbed his combat knife. The blade flashed in the dim light as he slashed at the beast's neck. It screeched, but it didn't die immediately. The pack was relentless, circling, testing him, waiting for a weakness. The soldiers who had entered earlier lowered their weapons, watching in quiet awe. No one spoke. No one moved. The room was filled with silence, punctuated only by sobs and shallow breaths. Ethan knelt beside Lyra and wrapped an arm around her shoulders, supporting her as she clung to him. He felt her small body shiver with relief. He had never known such gratitude, such pure raw emotion directed at him personally. It was overwhelming, and in that moment he understood something humans always seemed to carry, something the universe both feared and admired, the strength to stand for others, even against impossible odds. The strength to risk everything for someone else's life, even when survival itself is uncertain. The mother's cry continued, loud and broken, full of pain and relief and gratitude, echoing through the empty dome. Ethan closed his eyes, letting it wash over him. It shattered him, but it also reminded him of why humans were capable of the impossible. Because when life mattered to them, they did not calculate risk. They did not hesitate. They did not flee. They stood and they fought for love, for hope, for life, and sometimes that was more powerful than any weapon in the universe. The dome was quiet now, except for Lyra's soft sobs and the distant hum of alien machinery restarting. Ethan sat against a broken wall, leaning on his rifle for support. His body ached everywhere, ribs bruised, muscles torn, armor dented, but he was alive. And more importantly, so was Lyra. The alien soldiers moved around them cautiously, their expressions a mix of respect, awe, and disbelief. None of them spoke at first. Their leader, a tall woman with violet skin and long silver hair, approached slowly. She knelt beside Ethan, scanning him with a careful, almost reverent gaze. "You faced 20 of them alone?" she asked softly, voice carrying astonishment. Ethan shrugged weakly, trying to make it seem like it was nothing. "I didn't have a choice," he said, breathing hard. "I couldn't leave her." The woman nodded slowly. She looked at Lyra, who was now clinging to her mother, and back at Ethan. "Humans," she whispered. Then louder, to the soldiers around her. "Humans are different." Ethan's heart tightened. Different. That was one word for what he felt different from the creatures. Different from the machines. Different from everyone who only calculated risk and survival. Humans carried something else. Something raw, something reckless. Something that made them capable of impossible things. He remembered all the battles he had fought in his life, the wars he had survived. He had seen fear, pain, and death in ways most beings could never imagine. But none of it compared to the raw intensity of what he had done here, not for orders, not for glory, not for money, but for a child's life. The soldiers whispered among themselves, amazement in every word. One said, "No alien would have done this." "Not for a child," another added. Even one soldier from their ranks could not have faced so many and survived. Ethan looked at Lyra's mother, still holding her daughter. Her eyes were shining with gratitude, and she gave him a small nod, a silent acknowledgement that he had carried her hope when all else failed. It wasn't just gratitude. It was understanding, respect, reverence, something that went deeper than words. He tried to stand, but the pain in his ribs forced him back down. Lyra slid next to him, pressing her small hand against his arm. "You're amazing," she said simply, her voice innocent but filled with truth. "You saved me. You really saved me." Ethan smiled weakly, feeling the burn of his exhaustion, and shook his head. "No," he whispered. "You saved me too. You gave me a reason to fight." The alien soldiers had begun documenting the scene, sending reports to the Galactic Council. The story spread quickly. A single human against 20 monsters. A child saved. No orders given, no assistance requested, no personal gain. Just action. Just hearts. And that, Ethan realized, was what humans were. Not the strongest. Not the fastest. Not the most armed. But when a human decided someone mattered, when a human chose to protect, they became unstoppable. The galaxy had seen fleets, weapons, and power, but the courage of a human, fueled by heart, defied everything. The mother of Lyra stepped closer to Ethan and placed a small hand on his shoulder. Her touch was soft but full of weight, a silent communication that went deeper than words. "You are human," she said softly, "and that is why you are feared, and why you are loved." Ethan blinked, letting the words sink in. Fear and love. Two sides of the same coin, both carried by humans in ways the galaxy often underestimated. He had faced death tonight, and in doing so, he had shown what humans could do. Lyra's small voice interrupted his thoughts. "Will you stay?" she asked, looking up at him with those silver eyes, innocent yet wise beyond her years. Ethan looked at her, then at her mother, then at the soldiers around them. He nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said. "I'll stay. I'll make sure you're safe." For a moment, the pain, the fear, the exhaustion, all of it faded. He sat there, a human among aliens, bloodied but unbroken. And he realized that sometimes courage wasn't measured by weapons or size. but by the choice to stand when everything said to fall. In that quiet, battered dome, Ethan Cross understood something simple, yet profound. Humans didn't just survive. Humans acted when it mattered. Humans loved when it mattered. And that made them something no monster, no army, and no machine could ever fully understand. Days later, the dome was no longer a battlefield. The blood had been cleaned, the broken walls repaired as best the alien engineers could manage, and the creatures were gone. Yet for Ethan, the battle still lived in every ache of his body, in every scar, and in every quiet moment when his mind replayed the hound's red eyes and snapping claws. He thought he had survived the worst of it, but he hadn't counted on the weight of something far heavier: the human heart. Lyra ran to him across the open courtyard, her small silver eyes sparkling with life and joy. She laughed a sound like sunlight breaking through darkness. Son jumped into his arms. Ethan held her, letting her tiny hands grip his suit. He smiled down at her, exhausted but happy, but there was a tension he could not shake. Something was coming. Her mother appeared behind her, walking slowly toward him, tears still glistening on her cheeks. In her hands was a small, glowing crystal, humming softly. She extended it toward him with trembling fingers. "It's for you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Something to remember. What you did for my daughter." Ethan took the crystal, feeling warmth and light radiate through it. Inside, a recording played automatically. It was the mother's voice, crying not in fear, but in gratitude so deep it shook him to his core. Every word, every sob, every trembling syllable carried the weight of a life saved, of a hope restored, of love renewed. He staggered slightly, the sound pressing down on him harder than any blow, sharper than any claw, more piercing than any wound. He had faced 20 monsters and survived. He had stared into death and walked away with life. But this broke something inside him that he didn't know could break. Lyra watched him carefully, concern flickering in her eyes. "Ethan, are you okay?" she whispered. He forced a shaky smile, holding back tears he didn't even realize he was holding. "Yeah, I'm okay," he said softly, though his voice trembled. He couldn't stop the emotion that flooded him. She was safe. Her mother was alive. And he had done it. He had really done it. The mother stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "No human could have done this for us," she said. "No alien. Only a human would fight like this. Only a human would risk everything without hesitation. You carried my daughter through darkness, and you did not falter." Ethan closed his eyes, letting the words sink in. All the battles, all the pain, all the years of loss and struggle, it all converged in this moment. And he realized something profound. Humans were more than their bodies, more than their weapons, more than the wars they fought. Humans were capable of something no one else in the universe could understand fully: the courage to stand alone, the strength to protect, and the willingness to give their hearts completely for another. He knelt to meet Lyra's eyes, seeing trust, love, and innocence mirrored there. "You're going to be okay," he whispered. "I promise you." Always. The mother knelt as well, embracing her daughter and Ethan in a single, trembling hug. For a long moment, the three of them were silent, sharing a quiet understanding. Ethan felt something lift inside him, the crushing weight of fear and exhaustion, but it was replaced by something even heavier: humility and awe at what humans could do. The crystal in his hands pulsed softly, echoing the rhythm of a heartbeat. It was more than a gift. It was a memory, a reminder, a testament to the fact that humans, in their hearts, were unstoppable when life mattered. The mother's cry, still playing faintly through the recording, reverberated in his chest. He allowed himself to finally cry, tears streaming down his face, mingling with the blood, sweat, and dust of the battle. In that moment, he understood why the universe feared humans. Not for their weapons, not for their strength, not for their numbers, but for the way they loved, the way they stood when others would run, and the way they would carry hope into places where even monsters dared not tread. Ethan stood, holding Lyra's hand and the crystal, feeling the warmth of both. The mother looked at him with tears and pride. "You are human," she said simply, "and that is why the universe will never forget you." Ethan looked up at the sky above K-47, stars glittering cold and distant. He felt broke